Good morning, everybody, fellow reefers.
Morning.
How the devil are we all this Sunday? Living the dream, Ron?
Tickety-boo.
Tickety-boo. Leo, how are you? Thank you
I'm
again.
Good.
You good?
Thank you for inviting me.
No, thanks for joining us, mate. You're very much welcome on this channel. Josh, all good? Still sore from last week or limbered up? All right?
Limbering off a little bit now. Done a couple of runs since. Start building it all back up again, ready for next year.
Good. Rob, all right where you are?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, all ticking away.
Nothing too strenuous now?
No, not at my age.
We are missing somebody, as you could probably see, the viewers can see. So me and Christian spent the last couple of days through some guidance and peer pressure from Ron and Rob about upgrading certain bits of our YouTube equipment. As you can probably notice, I've invested in a better camera and hopefully a better microphone. It was all working last night. Me and Christian were having a chat. Everything was going great. And then literally within the last hour, it's all gone to pot. So Christian is right at this moment in time, smashing his studio to pieces, like, you know, a cartoon Wreck-It Ralph, or whatever you want to call it. So whether he's got anything left, by the end of this stream, who knows? But hopefully, yes. So if you see any damaged, rather expensive second-hand equipment that come up on eBay this afternoon, you know, and it's from Ripley, then you know exactly who's posted it. So anyway, hopefully he will have fixed it in the next 2 hours, and he will come on. So there's a few questions that he wants to speak to and ask our guest today, Leo. So, good week so far. Good weekend, everybody. Anything to report?
Nothing exciting.
Nothing exciting.
Too exciting.
Center broke.
Spawning.
Yeah.
Yes, you did. We watched that. Yeah, it was really good. Good.
It's an empty tank. It's an easy video to make.
It looked very clean, though. I'll give you that. Your lumps is so meticulous in that little laboratory we've got. Very clean. Almost Josh level clean. Almost.
Yeah. I took inspiration. See, I thought this tank, I'm going to keep it clean.
Oh dear. Okay. Right then. So, Leo, we've got a series of questions for you, as you already know. We're going to take it in turns this morning rather than last week we were with Sam, where we were sort of talking all at once or talking in turns. So this week we're going to take it in turns around the table, ask you a series of questions. And if you, the viewers, want to ask Leo anything or any Q&A, we're going to try and leave that towards the end so it doesn't overlap anything that we're already wanting to talk to Leo about. But if there is anything in the comments that we feel relevant, I'll throw it in there and we'll expand on it as a group. All right. So thank you everybody for joining us so far this morning. I'm just going to jump straight into the comments and see who's set the alarm clock and joined us for this chat with Leo. So first gentleman in the stream, as always, good old John Boy. Morning, John Wright. Thanks for joining us. We've got Rama in there as well. Morning, Rama. Thanks for coming on. Lee's here. Lee's in the house.
Hey, Lee.
Lee. We've got another Lee. Lee's Reef. Morning to you. Critical Reefer. Hope you and your tanks are doing well. Yeah, not too bad, actually. Hope you are, mate. Hope you're having a good one. UKM 120. Good morning. We've got Gills, Liam's, another avatar. Somebody's got a lot of spare time at the minute making these avatars.
It's like every week.
Every week, a different shark avatar. Yeah. Very good. Missed last year on Friday. Oh, he missed it. Yeah, actually had to talk to the missus. Turns out she doesn't look at Toys R Us anymore. Oh, dear. Yes. And who else have we got in the chat? Dave. Morning, Dave. Morning from sunny Crete. Sat here with a lovely cocktail. Catch up later on. Have a good weekend. Hopefully see you on Friday, Dave. I think you're coming to the meet-up on the sleepover before the Aqua Show. Who else have we got? Drip is here. Morning, you Reef Bleep. Tom, your picture is fuzzy, mate. Is that the new old camera? Yeah. Funny guy. Paul's here. Fish Palace. Morning, Paul. Thanks for joining. Have a good weekend. And Jay's always also jumped on. Morning, guys. Excited.
Jay.
Great lineup. Thanks for joining, Jay. Right then. So, Leo, I don't think you really need much of an introduction, but you've been in the hobby for what? Over 20 years now?
I started freshwater when I was 5, and I started marine aquariums when I was 16.
Yeah.
So that's almost 25 years. More than 25 years.
That's what marine does to you. Just lose.
Yeah, I lost count, but it's more than 25 years now. So yeah, obviously a lot changed, but yeah.
And you're now the owner of a coral farm. You're in Holland, obviously, and you are. You said earlier 25 minutes to your facility from your house. So daily commute.
It's daily commute, 25 minutes. It's like a business unit. I was able to acquire 3 years ago.
Yeah,
and we expanded the farm to almost 95 square meters then. So it's not super big, but it's very compact and very efficiently designed. So we have more than 18 square meters of surface area and about 7,500 liters of seawater.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And you are SPS Acropora predominantly. That's what you're focused on, specialize in, yeah?
Yeah, it's 99.5% Acropora, I always say, because we have one torch coral, one Symphilia, and two Favia corals, and that's it. The rest is only Acropora. Oh, we have one Montipora in the farm. So it's really maybe even more than 99.5% acros. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Well, for anybody who hasn't, I know you did a recent podcast with Beyond the Reef that is definitely worth watch. Goes into a lot of talk and detail in some of the sort of chemistry and the things you do there in the farm. I'm just going to put a couple of videos that you sent in to me so the viewers can have a little bit of a taster in terms of what you're talking about before we get into these questions. So I think this is the first one. So what are we looking at here? So is this the farm in general? This is the
ground floor. We have 2 floors, and these are the frag system. So most of the frags are in these tanks, and you also see a little bit of mother colonies actually, because we don't have enough space upstairs anymore for all the mothers. So a few of the mother colonies are actually in between here, but most of the frags we put in these systems downstairs, which are 6 meters of frag system, so 6 by 1 meter. And we have another system on the right, which you will see in a few seconds, that we use for photography and all the reserved frags and all the frags that are on the point of being shipped out. And I cannot show you yet, but on this floor, we're also building a show tank, which will be 3 meter by 1 meter, roughly 1,700 liters. And that will be really a showcase tank of what you can do with the frags we grow in the farm. So all of our best species will be placed in that tank as a frag, and will be grown out over a couple of years. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I've got to ask you: do you ever count them?
I never did. I have no idea, but I think we roughly make about 300 to 400 frags every month. We're able to take 300 to 400 frags of our mother colonies every month. So it must be a couple of thousand frags constantly growing, because most frags will grow about 2-3 months before they are shipped out. So we have several thousand frags at the moment. Yeah.
Wow. And this next video, I think this is a bit of a close-up that you sent me. So these are you can see some of the Acropora in a bit more detail there, can't you? So quite a wide selection from the looks of it.
Yeah, we actually tried to acquire every acro species and a lot of morphs, because of course within a species you have different color morphs. But we tried to collect them all to become sort of a coral bank, and to have every species and morph available for customers if they're really looking for something specific. Yeah.
Okay. And then this one, this is
upstairs. These are the biggest part actually of the mother colonies. You see a few frags as well in here, but most of the mother colonies are in these couple of tanks. It's a totally separate system, and basically nothing enters this system anymore, because you see it's quite full, and we want to keep this totally safe and free of any outside influence. So all the tools, everything we use here is totally separated from downstairs. And most of the frags we take actually come from here, and a couple of colonies downstairs. And we also experiment with different types of lighting in here. Yeah, that's our upstairs floor. Yeah.
And then the last one that you've sent me, I do believe from listening to your recent podcast, is one of these set up with just blue lighting from memory.
Yeah, these are the mother colony tanks on the left side. We do experimentation right now with LEDs and very white T5. So we do some experimentation with different wavelengths and different spectra of light to see what effect it has on coloration and growth rate. We are, mostly T5 dominant in the whole farm. But we try to experiment a little bit more with LEDs now, because in the end, I think I have to convert totally to LEDs. So it's better to experiment a little bit ahead and see what works best. Yeah.
Tom, if you're going to play any more of those videos, you're going to have to put a warning up. They are filthy.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Do you know what I'm gonna do, Ron? I'm gonna do it. I think we should go again, don't you?
Yes, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, some of the colors are just stunning.
Well, this is all AI, right? So it's not real. So don't yeah. No, you see, downstairs we run the ATI hybrids. So there's a little bit of LED, but mostly it's still T5 lit. So we use a lot of white T5 bulbs actually to give the corals a full spectrum, and they do really well with that. But I've tried running them, for years, and just the heat they give off is just tremendous. Yeah, you can fry an egg on top of them. It's for sure. They get very, very warm. We do have a very good exhaust system. We were able to, when we got this new facility, we were able to basically build it from scratch. And I think the exhaust system is basically copied from, let's say, an indoor gardening indoor gardener solution. So it's a lot of the humidity, a lot of the heat will be actually transferred away quite quickly, so it doesn't get very warm in here. You can actually see in the last seconds, you can see all the vents, all the pipes that are used to extract all the heat.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's nice.
Are you all right there, Ron? He's still with us?
I've never been so turned
don't
on.
Stand up. Don't stand up, will you?
No. My trousers are going to explode. If I had them on.
Do you ever allow any visitors to the farm, Leo, or is it literally strictly off?
Well, it's not so much that we allow it, but we want to, we don't want to say no to one person and say yes to another. So we try to be very consistent in saying it's not possible, because we just don't. I just have very limited time. This is more than a full-time job, and I also have a family at home. I do have a teaching job. I work in university for 2 days a week. Yeah, just because I like it. I like to interact with the students, because if I'm already more than full-time in the lab, and I'm sometimes feel like some sort of mad professor in a blue light lab all day. So I need to get out, talk to some students, talk to my colleagues to keep my sanity a little bit. But everything together, it's a super busy schedule already. So if I'm open to visitors, I want everything to look good. So it's just not possible at the moment. Yeah.
Did you employ anyone else in that farm, or you do it all on your own?
Yeah, I do have someone that helps me every week on a Monday for just a very general maintenance, all the preparation for shipping, cleaning the whole farm, and I'm also educating him a bit for when I'm away. Of course, I try to take some days off from time to time, and it's nice if he can step in and do some of the maintenance and know how things work and know all the protocols. But it's something that takes years to really educate someone how to deal with different situations. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right, you ready for us to put you on the spot and ask you some questions?
Interrogation time.
Interrogation time.
It's already started.
Right, so I'm gonna kick us off with one of the questions that I put together. I think you've kind of touched on it a little moment ago regarding your background. So I think for me, I'm always intrigued with somebody that ends up setting up a farm as to talk to me about your journey. You know, what point did you decide I want to take it the next level? You know, when did you decide this is what I want to do, and how did you approach it?
Well, I think I always knew I wanted to do something with biology and something with underwater life. But I never thought of it something I want to do professionally, because I thought it's just not possible, or I didn't know actually how to start my own business or to become successful with it. But it actually grew very organically to this point. I've been a hobbyist, like I said, since I was 16. Of course, at some point when you become successful, you start exchanging some frags, selling some frags here and there. And at some point it became a little bit too big to do at home. And I was able to rent a very small, like more or less of an office room somewhere in a big building. It was 25 square meters, and I totally packed it with tanks, and everything was the bill was including electricity. I think they still regret it, but yeah. It was a little bit crazy, but I actually started over there, and I was able to slowly grow my business next to my full-time job back then. And during Corona time, during COVID, I was forced to work at home, and of course I was just working over there in that small unit, and people really starting to discover buying corals online. And it really took off back then, and I made the decision to take some risk and really start a full-time job doing growing corals, or almost a full-time job growing corals. Yeah, and that's around more than 3 years ago now. I think it's 5 years ago since I really started to become seriously. And of course, when I bought this new facility, it's really my core business. Yeah.
And do you ever have to pinch yourself, sort of you're living the dream? Is it something you actually always knew you were going to end up doing, or is it just sort of a bit of a,
Well, maybe for the outside, it feels like a dream job, but it's probably other people will recognize if you just have your day-to-day job, you're worried about these small things that popping up, or it's sometimes you have those moments of realization where you just look at the whole farm and see, like, okay, this is really awesome. Look what I built. And look at all the customers who are willing to buy corals from me. They must be crazy, right? But most of the times it's just a job, to be honest. And it's a quite stressful and busy job as well. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that one. Right then. So next question is from Joshua.
Yeah, so obviously you did touch before on the lighting you're using across the farm, and that you are experimenting now as well. So if money was no object, and access to any lighting was available, what would be your absolute ideal lighting setup when we're talking sort of color, temperature, photo period, and the source of the light? What would it be for Aquapora, sorry.
Yeah, good question. I think when money was really not an option, or not a factor, I would go full LEDs, and I would definitely choose for a brand or a pendant that is the most full spectrum possible, because I really believe that in the end, full spectrum lighting is the best for both coloration of acros, but also growth. And you just get the most value for your watt, basically, if you just give them full spectrum instead of only blues. So that's what I want. That's what I would do. And the amount of lighting, I would definitely use the same wattage in LEDs as you would use for halides or T5. So I would basically hang my tanks full with LED pendants, so not just a few separated spots, but basically cover the whole tank with LEDs, and go for a really full spectrum. And lighting period, roughly 8 hours peak and 12 to 14 hours in total, with building up and ramping down time. Yeah. And the brand, I think it doesn't really matter if you go for Radions or GHL or Reef Factory. It doesn't really matter that much. I think they can all grow corals, maybe some a little bit better than others, but yeah, I think they're all capable of growing corals if you just use enough of them. Yeah.
Cool. What did you, just out of interest on the back of what Josh is asking, what equipment lighting wise did you start off with? Have you evolved the equipment?
You mean back in the days? Yeah, I started with the T8 bulbs, so the very the more the wide, broad, more thicker,
yeah,
which are much less efficient. So you really had to put your whole tank full of those bulbs. You couldn't enter the tank basically anymore. So much bulbs you had above the tank. That gradually moved to halides. When I was 16, 17, halides were very expensive for like a young guy like me. But in the end, I was able to buy a secondhand halide pendant, and I used halides for a long time. And at some point, ATI came with the sun power units, and they were quite relatively cheap to acquire, definitely secondhand. And I switched to T5s after that. And I basically still I'm still stuck to that T5s, only moving up to the hybrid fixtures. Yeah.
Any particular bulbs you go for? Any particular combination you'd recommend?
Like I said, full spectrum is the way I would go. Sorry, I'm a little bit struggling with the sun here.
I was hoping he was going to answer that question as tulips, but never mind.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend full spectrum. So I would always go for a combination of Blue Plus and Coral Plus bulbs, or Blue Plus and Aqua Blue Special bulbs. So it's both visually pleasing to look at, but also covers the full spectrum lighting.
You're sort of the 50-50, aren't you? I think on the Blue Plus and then Coral Plus or Aqua Blue Special.
Yeah, still 50-50 for sure. Yeah, I think that's the best for both coral growth and coloration. If you don't care so much about growth, which I can imagine as a hobbyist, you're probably pleasing for the eye is a little bit more important than in my case. You could go for 75% Blue Plus and 25% Coral Plus for sure. That's definitely fine. Yeah.
Cool. You all right with that, Josh? Happy with that?
Mm-hmm. Very good. Matches the T5s I'm running, so.
Cool. Right then, over to you, Ron.
Oh, yeah. So is there anything different that's happening in Holland that there is to other parts of the world in terms of, you've already said you can actually source most of the major lighting brands and things. We spoke to some of the actual electrical equipment is really, really difficult to get a hold of. You being in Europe, is there anything different or unique in Holland?
Well, I think equipment-wise and products-wise, it's very easy to acquire most of the stuff because a lot of brands are originated from Germany or from the US, and that's all very easy to get. So sourcing of products and equipment is easy. For me, specifically as a farmer, because Holland is very small, most of my orders are cross-border. So I ship a lot to countries outside of Holland. So packing-wise and shipping-wise, it's a little bit more challenging than just being a store that sells a lot local. So your shipping and your packing has to be top-notch to actually make a profit here and there. So that's definitely I think unique to Holland, because Holland is such a small country and the market is also very small. So you really have to look across the border to really find your customers. Yeah.
Are there legislators?
Well, within the EU, I think it's everywhere. Everywhere is the same. So shipping across the EU is also very easy. And I think it's comparable to other countries in Europe. So I think there's not any other regulations here. Of course, we have a major airport here, the international airport. So we do get a lot of good coral shipments here. We also have a few very large wholesalers, one of the biggest in Europe. So that makes sourcing corals for us a little bit easier than maybe some other parts in Europe. I'm still struggling with the lights, guys. So, but just,
You're right,
just
you're fine.
please continue. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to ask you on the back of what Ron's asking there. You were talking about shipping it to other countries. Just out of interest, which are the top sort of 2-3 countries that you're shipping to other than in your homeland? You know, where else? Where are the most popular?
Yeah, I ship to basically the biggest countries in Europe, because the biggest countries also has the biggest market. So that's for sure Germany, but also France, Italy, Spain, Portugal. Those are just the most populated countries in Europe. So yeah, the most customers are just there based on numbers. Yeah.
And how do you go on? Sorry, go on.
It's interesting because sometimes you have shipments in one day, and one goes to Sweden and the other one goes to Portugal. And in one package you have to add cool packs, and in one package you have to add heat packs. So you know, it's sometimes I besides a coral farmer, I just feel like a professional shipper and packer, because it's almost like a different profession to really ship and pack corals well to survive transport.
That's what I was going to just lead on to ask you. What differences did you do in terms of packaging from one country to the other? But you've just answered that. Thank you. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, insulation. That's the top three: insulation. And other than that, adding cool packs, heat packs. Really keep an eye on the local weather. You have to know where the packages actually go through, because some packages first go to a central hub somewhere. Maybe there it's freezing at night, but in Italy it's still 30 degrees during the daytime. So do you have to heat packs? Do you have to add cool packs? Maybe in some cases add nothing. So yeah, it's really some sort of experience you have to develop. Yeah.
Cool.
So have you documented all that? Have you got like a spreadsheet of you're sending a package to some?
Yeah,
city?
it's all documented in here. No.
Right.
No, but good one. If I ever want to take a holiday again, then I need to start documenting all these protocols and all these steps. And my wife said many times you should write these things down, because if you break a leg, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah. That's very true. Yeah.
But I still need to do that. So yeah.
Cool. Right. Thanks for that. I'm going to skip the next one because that was Christian. I'll leave Christian's till the end. Over to you, Rob.
Okay, right. Yeah, so I think you've already answered this actually previously, but what percentage mix in your farm is export versus your own mother colony frags?
Well, yeah, good question. We don't do a lot of imports. Actually, we do no imports ourselves, so we don't order boxes of corals that are transshipped to our farm. So what we actually do is visit several wholesalers and importers in Europe. Can be either in Holland or in Germany, to really pick the individual colonies by hand. And out of a shipment of 200, 300, 400 pieces that come in, we maybe select 2 or 3 and take them back. But we also source a lot from different farms, different hobbyists, who also, in many cases, build up a very nice collection. So if you can take frags of those, it's actually saving a lot of effort of selecting yourself. So yeah, basically everything we have is aquaculture. Some of them for already a very long time, because they come from other farmers or other hobbyists. And the species we collect ourselves, we try to let them grow at least for 1.5 to 2 years in the farm, and only frag the new growth of them. So they can be a little bit younger than those frags from other farmers or hobbyists, but they're definitely more than a year old before they are shipped out. Yeah.
Right. So in terms of species, I mean, are you seeing many new species, or are you on the hunt for different colour morphs of species you've already got?
Yeah, I'm leaving a lot of requests with the importers, because sometimes they can get a hold of something special, and they just keep it in mind if I have a very specific request. But I'm definitely trying to acquire every coral species or every acropore species available. Of course, some only grow in the Caribbean, so those are off limits. But everything that grows in the Indo-Pacific region, I try to collect. And I try to collect as many morphs as possible. So if you take the very famous Acropora millipora, I try to acquire at least all the colors available. So blue, pink, yellow, green. So even the colors that are not in super high demand, I really try to have them at least in the farm. So I can at least say, okay, I have everything available.
Yeah.
Is that through choice or is that addiction?
Well, commercially, it's not very smart. So I think it's more of an addiction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the full complement of corals. Everyone.
Yeah, true. For instance, I also grow the green slimer, just the Acropora formosa, the green one. I cannot even give it away for free. People don't want it, but I'm still growing it because I think you cannot have a coral farm without that coral. So it's a classic, and that's why we still grow it. Yeah.
Well, talking about classics, ironically, you've just led me into my next question for you. Thank you for that. So I wanted to know, which corals do you miss the most that were once readily available in your earlier years of reefing that are probably harder to find or less easy to import? Which ones do stand out to you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think coral farmers, Acropora farmers, really look after what corals sell the best, obviously.
Yeah.
And the last 10 years, I think, with the whole rise of the LED lighting and the more blue shift towards blue spectrum, a lot of the corals that look good under full spectrum became more and more difficult to acquire. For instance, corals that are very bright blue, under blue LED.
Like a Gomezi?
Yeah, the Gomezi, the Austeras, under blue LEDs, they just look black or brown. But under full spectrum, they're as blue as a blue marker, they're as a blue ballpoint marker. So those are very hard to get. The more classics, the green slimer, for instance, it's harder and harder to get. Of course, a lot of hobbyists still grow it, but in imports, you rarely see it anymore. But also corals that are solid pink. You have those very super hot pink corals, which are super bright under full spectrum lighting, but under blues, they tend to wash out a bit. Those are actually also very hard to find nowadays. And if you run full spectrum lighting at home, those corals can really add some extra dimension during daytime, I think. And they're very hard to find. Yeah.
Right, and thanks for that. I'm going to pass you over to Josh. Your turn.
Yeah, so obviously I did watch the live stream you did before with Frag Garage. And obviously you talked about the Tropic Marine stuff that you use then, but is there anything in particular, any parameter in particular that you'd focus your attention on, or is it a case of looking across the board and really trying to keep everything as in line as possible?
I think alkalinity, of course, is very important. So I'm monitoring that 24 hours a day. Having said that, I think some alkalinity swings are actually not that harmful. But if you have a rise in alkalinity, for instance, something else is probably off. It can be from a power outage or a lighting issue. But it can also be another parameter that stresses the corals and really slows down growth. So I think alkalinity is a very good measuring of steady growth. So that's a very important one. But I think the most important one to keep relatively stable for hobbyists, but also for me, is the phosphate levels. Because if phosphate levels swing too much, you will definitely see a negative effect in especially your Acropora. So I try to keep my phosphate levels relatively stable by just feeding the same amounts, using the same amount of expert methods, and not changing things too quickly, too soon. Yeah.
Just on the back of that, Oh, sorry, Josh. Just on the back of that, Leo. Is there anything that you do in terms of your care, or I suppose your general upkeep of the corals, in terms of the hardening them to an extent with certain parameters, so that they're more likely to thrive in hobbyist tanks that are perhaps not as in tune with your system or your water chemistry?
Well, I think maybe deliberately or not, you're always hardening the corals, because even in a coral farm, you always have fluctuations. You always have parameters changing over time. You have temperature fluctuations. You have alkalinity fluctuations. So any coral that you get from the wild that's not able to adapt to those changing parameters, it will basically either not color up well, or not grow so well, or either die. So those corals are not interesting to farm out anyway. So those will sooner or later just be sold off, or just or just thrown away, basically, in some cases.
Yeah. It's not natural selection. Yeah.
It's some sort of selection, definitely, but I think a coral farm is as stable as someone's home tank. You have so many corals on still quite a small volume, so fluctuations are always there, and you basically select the corals undeliberately all the time. Yeah.
In terms of, obviously, you said about phosphate being the most stable there, and you keep your nutrient export methods as stable as possible. What is your primary export method that you find is most effective in regulating that phosphate level?
Well, first of all, a lot of flow. So we don't have any sand. We don't have any. We don't have a lot of live rock. So all the detritus is basically suspended all the time, and is able to skimmed off. So we have huge, quite big skimmers. We tend to overskim all the systems, so the detritus is taken out very effectively. So that's the first thing: flow in combination with skimming. Second of all, we do water changes every week, about 15% in every system. So all the detritus that tend to accumulate in some corner or whatever, maybe in the sump, we try to clean that out on a weekly basis. And yeah, that's actually the most important. We don't use any filter socks. We don't use any carbon sources like vodka or sugar or anything else to lower the nutrients. We just rely on big skimmers, manual removal, and a lot of flow. Yeah. And of course, the corals, when the corals grow, they also take up a lot of those phosphates and nitrates. So that helps a lot for sure. Yeah.
So you're running a very clean system by the sounds of it then.
Yeah, it's quite clean, but we do have to clean it every week, because there's still some accumulation of detritus here and there. But if you're really on top of it, it stays pretty clean. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you for that, Leo. Right, over to you, Ron.
Yeah, so I'm only just getting started on my coral farm, and obviously you're a professional.
He's not going to send you his list. He's not going to send you it.
I'm not actually genuinely starting off doing this for money at all. I just started growing corals, and I was actually having to throw buckets full in the bin because I was having to trim them all the time. So my partner bought me a frag tank. The rest is history. So when you get a new coral in, and it is a slightly different morph or color tone or growth habit, does that then dictate for you a higher price? And then do other corals that you've sold hundreds of then start to slip down on a gradual scale in price because the market is flooded with it?
Yeah, so pricing is something that has multiple factors involved. First of all, the growth rate. If a coral grows really fast, either in my tank or another farmer's tank or a hobbyist tank, if a coral is easy to keep and grows fast, the prices will be relatively low, or they will drop very quickly. Maybe they start up high initially, but they will drop very quickly because the market is flooded. If I have a coral that's, first of all, very rare, so that I never seen before, and that's not something anyone else can offer. It's very hard to keep and also grows very slowly, but it's still in high demand. Then the prices are much higher, and the prices are actually determined by those factors like growth rate, availability, and that's based on growth rate, but also difficulty to keep, and also how much you find it in imports. So I do have some corals that are quite expensive because they're just dying very quickly, or the frags die very quickly. And I only have one colony, and I've never seen something else similar. And other farmers also don't have it. So it's and then still, the customers in the end decide if they want to pay the price or not. So in the end, the customer decides the final price. But I try to keep those factors in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, some of the LPS like ACANs, and I've got a Goniastra in particular that just it grows like a new mouth a year. I need to start charging £2,000 a head for that. It's so long to grow. Yeah,
those species are actually not even interesting to farm when there's still imports available. I think those species become more interesting to farm when there's really an import ban. And then
no other option.
And then farming becomes more interesting for those. But as long as Scolimia, etc., is still imported, why would you farm that? Because it grows so slowly. It's you cannot really make any profit, basically. Yeah. And the advantage of acros is that if a colony reaches a certain size, it will actually pop off many branches, and it basically grows exponentially. So it becomes much easier to snap off 1 or 2 branches every month, and that's much more interesting in the end than farming LPS, I think. Yeah.
Do you ever factor into your cost the actual success of shipping? I can imagine.
Yes.
For coral, like some ship better than others.
Yeah, for sure. Like tenuis is difficult in any department. First of all, it's very hard to get species that keep their color and that are very nicely colored. Second of all, they grow very slow. Third of all, they're very susceptible for just dying off. When there's any fluctuation, they will die. And they're also hard shippers. So all those factors combined make them just more expensive than, let's say, a standard Millipora or something. But all these factors combined determine the price. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because when we ship something and it dies, we have to, of course, reimburse it.
Yeah, got to reimburse
price
it.
And
only if you charge in the first place.
Yeah, that's why I like your business model, Ron. It's good.
I'll fucking bet you do.
While we're on price, while we're still on price, before we move on at the second, Leo, what is at the minute? What's the most expensive frag that you're offering to reefers at the minute?
We have the Big R Walt Disney, and that's the official US strain. So not just a piece from Bali that we slapped the name on. So we have the original strain from the US of the Walt Disney, which is of course very sought after, and we cannot offer it a lot, so I don't even know the price for sure, but I think it's $3.99 at the moment. But we're able to offer maybe 2 or 3 frags a year because it's such a slow grower.
Wow.
And we bought it as a frag originally, so we cannot just cut off the whole coral and sell it. So if we want to keep something to grow out, we can only sell 2, 3, 4 frags a year at the moment. But I hope over time, when the colony grows or we have multiple colonies, we can drop the price a little bit actually. But at the moment, that's not possible. Yeah.
So that's €400 for a frag.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
You need to up them prices, Leo. It sounds pretty cheap.
Well, I think it's already a lot of money. We do have a frag that potentially is even more expensive. It's a grafted Millipora, the rainbow splice. So it has the pink and the gold in one branch.
Yeah.
And those frags can potentially be €1,000+ but we were never able to even make a frag because we got a tiny frag ourselves for already a lot of money, and we first need to grow it out. And I really don't know what to ask for it, because I don't want to ask more than €1,000 for sure.
So is that what they describe as a chimera? Is that?
Yes, correct. It's really
it is,
a grafted coral, also originally coming from the US, which makes it, of course, also very expensive to acquire in the first place.
Yeah.
Christian's got it. Christian's got one. I've seen it.
It's
unreal.
Yeah. There are a couple of reefers in Europe that got one. A couple of farmers. So I hope within 1 or 2 years we can actually offer frags. Like all of us can offer frags, and we can make the price a little bit more reasonable. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, what's the next one? Over to you, Rob, on this one.
Yeah. Any particular dosing? I know you are a calc doser, I believe, aren't you?
Yes.
So,
The base parameters are covered by calc water or lime water. So that I think that's doing about 30% of calcium and alkalinity for the farm on a daily basis, and the rest is all added by the full bulling system from Tropic Marine, and it has the trace elements blended in. So all the trace elements are also added automatically with the bulling solutions.
Is that the A and the K?
The A and K, yes, correct. The A and K elements.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes we add a little bit of extra fluoride or iodine to really match the ICP numbers a little bit more. But in most cases, it's pretty close to optimal. Some traces are on the low side, shows up on the low side on the ICP, but I'm not really worried about that because I know it's just added every day, and better a little bit low numbers than too high. Yeah.
So 30%, is that because that's the maximum amount of calc you can get in?
Yeah,
with your
that's the maximum evaporation. That's the maximum I can add before diluting the water, basically. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Cool.
So what is your evaporation, just out of interest, on a system that size? Do you know?
I can calculate what I add per day in calc water per system. Let me quickly calculate. Yeah, it's about 25 liters of calc water per system per day. So in total, it's roughly 50 liters of calc water a day for the whole farm.
Wow. So you're just mixing that and saturating it in a barrel, are you? You're not using stirrers or anything?
We DIY. We custom built basically a very big reactor. I think it's like 30 liters. And it has just a J-Bow pump inside, which is doing a very good job for a couple of years already. And that pump comes on twice a day, just mixing the whole barrel.
Right.
Then it's the dosing pump will be off for half an hour, so it's able to settle, and then it will start dosing again. So that's a cycle that happens twice a day. So twice a day it's mixed up. Dosing will stop for an hour, it will settle again, and then we'll continue dosing. So it's a very easy.
Sits in the calc. The pump does.
The pump is inside the calc water, and it's
like a snowball. I imagine.
Yes. Wow. And it's being tortured for more than 2 years now, but it's still running perfectly.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's really impressive. Okay. Yeah. And it's basically a very easy system. It never fails. It's just with a simple timer, 2 timers, one that switch on and off the mixing pump, and one that switch on and off the dosing pumps, and that's it. And then
you just top it off? You just throw some more calc in?
I throw a new calc every week, and I will totally clean out the whole barrel like 4 times a year, roughly, because there's always some precipitation or sedimentation in there. So 4 times a year, I will just use the pressure washer and clean the whole thing out. And
cool.
That's it.
Yeah, nice and simple.
Yeah, very simple. And it's actually gravity fed by we have a big RO water storage, and it's gravity fed by that RO water storage. So it's always it's just getting the new water, the new RO water automatically as well. Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Makes our little stirrers sound so easy to
Yeah.
tear off.
Yeah.
Well, on this level, if you have to make 50 liters of calc water a day, you really, any hobbyist solutions are not, they're not really applying anymore. No. Yeah. So you really have to think of something else.
I reckon the cost of a little Jebao, pump is minuscule if you're going to get 2 years out of it as well. Into it's something you could quite happily replace every couple of years. So good old Jebao.
I'm just amazed that it's still running with all the calc it has to mix, and but it's doing fine. I check it like 4 times a year. Is the rotor or is the axle corroded or whatever? But it's looking perfect. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think probably the fact you're doing it daily will help, won't it? Rather than just doing it, if you were to do it weekly, you might get to a point where it seizes up, perhaps. But But no,
probably.
No, it's interesting. Thanks for that. Right then. So I would like to know. I want to know what your friends, spouse, family think of the coral farm and your reefing obsession. And how involved are they? So, start at the beginning. You obviously were saying to friends, family members, I'm thinking of doing, the coral farm. What was their reactions, and what is their, what do they think about it now?
I think many of my friends don't really understand what I do. I try to explain it, but they just, they just think like, okay, this is very, very interesting, but not in a positive way. This guy is like in blue lights. They say like, aren't you going crazy in the blue lights all day? And I'm saying, no, I actually like it. So many of my friends, they kind of understand what I do, but not really in detail. Of course, my wife, she's really into it. She really, she's not into it personally, but she really likes that I have such a passion and a thing to go for, and such a clear goal. So she tries. She supports me in everything I do. So that's I think very important, because otherwise you cannot run this kind of business. And sometimes you have something urgent coming up which takes up the whole weekend or the evening you plan together, but you have to go to the farm really to fix some urgent issue or whatever. So if you don't have a partner that's really understanding, it's not going to work out, I think. Or you will getting a divorce, probably.
Yeah, that's that.
That's also an
that's
option,
support directly correlated to your net profit each year as well.
And my colleagues from work, of course, a lot of them are biologists, so they do understand the biology part of it. So they know what a coral is, they know how it grows and everything. But most of them are teachers, so they don't really understand the business part. So when I explain I can actually make a living from it, they're still very amazed, and they cannot really imagine how I do it, or they think I'm just. I also get a lot of remarks that I'm only there for 1 or 2 days a week, so they think I'm just the rest of the time I'm just chilling on my bed or chilling on the beach. But I say, okay, guys, this is actually like a 65 hour job every week. So I think most people don't realize how much time actually goes into running this. And that's
what do you actually teach then? Sorry, what do you teach? You teach biology, or you teach marine biology, or what is it?
Well, unfortunately, not marine biology. I work in the lab at the university, so I'm doing a lot of lab work with the students. I'm and that goes from very basic lab work to microbiology. I'm also helping students with their thesis or with any research they're doing, but then really focused on the lab work.
Okay, cool.
So I do have a biology background, not so much a laboratory background. So that's much more
so
what I learned.
Undergrad students.
Yes, it's bachelor level students. Yes.
Cool.
So I can use my experience from the farm over in the lab there, and the other way around. So
yeah,
it's
cool.
yeah.
On the back of that I've just asked you, Leo. So I know Christian, one of his issues is, and he's just put a comment in. I will read your questions out, Christian, but I was leaving it till the end to see if you were going to be able to join us, but clearly you're not, because he's well and truly smashed it all up and called it a day. So we'll ask those at the end. We should have time. One of the things I want to ask you, Leo, on the back of this. So I know, talk about Christian for a minute. So with him being a UK coral farmer, things like holidays, travel, maybe things like that. You know, how do you get around that obstacle? Do you travel? Do you have time with the family, or do you just decide no, family's in holidays in Holland? That's it. Full stop. Camping.
Yeah, that's a bit of a painful question. No, but no, I actually haven't had a holiday in over 3 years. Ever since I have the larger farm now, I haven't had a holiday outside of the country for 3 years. I do try to reserve time in the weekends for family. Of course, I do have to go to the farm on a daily basis, only for just very briefly even. So I'm there every day. And when I do travel, it's always within a couple of hours. So in case of emergency, I can go back. I flew a couple of times to London because, you know, it's only 1 hour flight, but I have been basically nervous all the time. Checking my parameters on my phone, checking the cameras, because it's just the idea that you cannot go back immediately. You have to wait for your flight, or you have to book another flight. It makes me very nervous. But long term, I really have to find a solution for this, because I really would like to travel with the family, but also like to travel just to Indonesia, for instance, to visit some coral farms, or to do some snorkeling or diving. So I try to delegate more and more to other people, and really teaching and training them to be more responsible when I'm away. Yeah.
You need to write those SOPs, don't you, for your farm?
Yes, for sure. Yes, for sure. Yeah.
So just before we move on, Leo. So you've been in reefing a long time, as you said at the beginning of this stream. So you met your partner during being a coral farmer or a hobbyist. I'm just curious to know how that first date went when she asked you what you did for a living, and to see the look on her face.
Yeah. Well, I was still a full-time teacher. This was just a side job back then when I met her. Of course, I founded the company in 2009, so that's quite a long time ago. But it's only been a full-time job for 3.5 years now. So on the first date, I would just mention I was a teacher in university.
All right, okay.
You know, not to scare them away immediately.
And as a byproduct of being a teacher, I do this. For sure. Good answer.
But actually, I met my wife roughly 7 years ago. So she basically was part of the whole journey of this becoming a full-time profession. So she basically grew into it together with me. Yeah.
Does she have any favorite corals?
No, she has no idea.
No idea.
No clue.
Does she refer to them as the green one, or the pink one, or the spiky one, or
that's about the level of
Okay, fair enough.
No tank at home then. No.
I did build a freshwater tank for my son recently, because he's almost 2 years now, so I want to infect him with the hobby a little bit. But it's going to be a freshwater tank for sure. No salt water in the house. No.
Wow.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Ron, yes. Freshwater.
Freshwater.
So we're going to go over to Josh now. Josh, your turn, mate.
Obviously, you've got a real mix of various aquaphora species on the farm. Do you find that with them being from different regions of the world, different depths in the ocean, that you do get quite a range of tolerance to flow and lighting, things like that? So do you tend to keep them all at a universal level, or will you place corals in the farm in certain places based off of their tolerance of flow and lighting?
Yeah, interesting question. For sure, in the beginning, especially, it's very important to know what a coral prefers, because you have high flow, high light corals for sure. and you have the lower light, lower flow corals. So especially when they're not really accustomed to tank conditions, you have to keep that in mind. And of course, in the farm, we have different systems, some with a little bit higher flow or lower flow. The light also on the edges of the tanks, the light tend to be a little bit less intensity than right in the middle. Same counts for flow. In the middle of the tanks, the flow is relatively higher than on the edges. So we play around with that for sure. But over time, the corals can actually handle a lot of different situations. So a lower light coral, if you keep it for 2-3 years, it will definitely accustom to higher light as well, if you just gradually, slowly get it accustomed to that. So you will see, for instance, the deep water, between quotes, species like the red dragons or the Hawking's echinata. It's maybe a little bit technical in the names, but those species over time, you can give them tons of light and tons of flow without them being stressed out at all. But in the beginning, when you just get them in, you definitely have to be careful and really take it into account where you put them. Yeah.
Is there a particular resource that you'd either recommend or you use yourself for, obviously when you get the new corals in, you use to identify them and then potentially place them in an area where you know would be optimum from the start before you then eventually move them into a more universal area?
Yeah, it's mostly based on experience. So I know which species are better in lower flow, lower light, and which can be put immediately in higher light and flow. So it's more an experience thing, but also based sometimes on just experimenting. If you put a coral in high light and flow and you see it's unhappy, you will just move it around until you see it's a little bit happier. I can say, for instance, corals from Australia, they tend to need much more light and flow than corals from Indonesia. So that's a basic guideline. And also the species like Millipora and all the tabling Acropora, those can handle much more light and flow than the more branching and thinly branched acro. So that's a rough guideline which you can use to guess the optimal conditions. Yeah.
Cool. I've noticed on your video on that podcast that you did recently that you're using, so just to touch on what Josh is saying there regarding flow. So you're using, is it gyres, combination of gyres and jebao? Is that right? From memory?
All the pumps are jebaos.
Jebao, sorry.
Yeah.
But what would it resemble a gyre? Sorry, like a spray barrel.
Yeah, it's the copy of the gyre basically. Like jebao copies every pump, more or less.
And the MP40 most recently.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Maybe I will use them as well.
We're all interested with that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was called Mr. Jebao, I think, by someone in the comments the other day.
You're not sponsored by them then?
No, unfortunately not. Maybe I should. You know, I'm making so much.
You should reach out.
Promotion. Yeah. But every pump in my farm is Jebao, including the return pumps, all the flow pumps. Of course, the skimmer pumps are not Jebao; they're just a brand of the skimmer. But all the other pumps are Jebao, and I have very good, experience with them. To be honest, I have, I think, 65 pumps constantly running, and I have very little failures and no issues at all up to this point. You know. And they offer many forms and different kinds of pumps. So I think for every circumstance they have a good solution. And the combination of normal wave pumps and gyres for us, it's a very good combo. Yeah.
So did you start with them from the beginning, or did you transition across to those?
No, we start from the beginning with all Jebao.
Okay.
And of course, as a hobbyist. Back in the day, I already had experience with them. Yeah. And they definitely improved over time, the quality, I think. But even back then, I had good experiences with them. So when I was designing and building this farm, I just decided to go all Jebao right away. Yeah.
What about cleaning them, Leo? I know Christian always says it can be a bit of a pain in the backside.
Yeah.
Cleaning. Do you have a regular routine, or is it just as and when you think they need a clean?
I think it's important to regularly clean them because flow really reduces over time, especially for the gyre style pumps. And it happens so gradually that you don't really notice. After you clean them, you always see a very big change, even when you clean them out a lot. So we just take them out on a regular basis. I think maybe 6 times a year, so not too much. And we just throw them in a bucket with a little bit of vinegar. I never actually clean the pump heads themselves, just the rotors and the grates basically, because the vinegar can be, it can be a little bit aggressive to the cords and all those parts. So those areas and the magnets, etc., are never cleaned at all, like never. So I only clean the rotors and the front part of the grill, and will be soaked in vinegar and scrubbed and placed back. Yeah.
There's a couple of questions in the comments I'm just going to jump into while we're on this topic, so we don't lose out on some of these questions. So Joseph Quinn is asking you, calling you Mr. Jebauer. There you go. Which flow mode do you prefer on them?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because the Jebau has a feature that you can master and slave certain pumps. Yeah. So we have one master pump, one controller. That's the master pump for the whole farm. So one controller controls basically more than 60 other controllers. And we set them on the W1 mode. That's the wave mode, which is a high, low, high, low. So not gradually high, low, but really high, low wave mode. And we adjusted the frequency so that the pulse is really resonating with the length of the tank, if that makes sense. So you're really able to create a physical wave mode in the tank with just a few pumps, not even using a wave box. And because we use very fixed sizes tanks for the whole farm, it's either 150 centimeters or 3 meters. The frequency of all those tanks are basically the same. So with one setting, we can basically create a wave in every tank in the whole farm. And if we want to feed, for instance, we only have to press the feed mode on one controller, and the whole farm will be shut down for 10 minutes. And there's no app, there's no connect to Wi-Fi involved. So I think other companies have to include this feature because it just always works. They always connect.
How do they talk to each other then? Have you got one controller?
But yeah, they talk to each other. I don't know how they do it. You don't connect it to central Wi-Fi. Maybe they have Bluetooth built in. I have no idea how it works, but it just always works.
It just works. Nice.
And it's totally off the grid, so you don't need internet for it. Of course, they're also not externally accessible by an app. That's the downside, but I don't use that feature a lot anyway. So everything is just manually controlled on the controller itself, but it's basically set and forget. If it works, if it's set to the right or set to the right settings, it's fine, So yeah, I really love those pumps, and I'm not sponsored, so I don't have stocks as well. So yeah.
A couple more on the subject before we move on. Got to say, I do like Jacob pumps. Been using them for 3 years, no issues. So nothing ever break on you. Touch wood. Everything all right? No issues. Magnets pop in or anything? No.
Well, let's say just never clean the magnets. That's
that's your
when you start putting the magnets in vinegar or citric acid or whatever, start to scrub them, brush them, let them clench together all the time. Yeah, that's where the damage is. So just leave the magnets on there. Just take out the pump. Don't clean the motor part. Just clean the front part. I think cleaning parts too much actually damages them more than they do any good. Skimmer pumps, maybe I clean them twice or three times a year, because how many times it happens you take out the rotor from the Royer exclusive skimmer and you break the axle or whatever. I'd rather just leave it in there. Just leave it in there.
Or you can't get it working, or you can't turn it back on again.
So, something like that, right? So I think there's definitely something of too much cleaning. Instead, just leave it as is. Yeah.
That sounds like it kind of contradicts your way of keeping a tank clean, though. So you've got this meticulous detritus-free system, but yet, oh well, leave the pumps.
Yeah, but
working, no?
Yeah, definitely.
Like I said, I take out the rotors and the front grates, but the rest I just leave in there. Yeah. I don't need anything to be free of coralline for sure. It doesn't have to be squeaky clean. It's more about the function. If it functions correctly, for me, that's good enough.
Cool. Yeah. Right. Thank you for that. Moving on, I think we are over to you, Ron. With this one, we've touched on it a little bit with the power heads, but I'll let you announce that one.
Well, first of all, can everybody just hit like? Come on, there's 40 people watching, and half of the people hit like. It takes that much effort.
Yes. Give us some love.
It makes a massive difference to Tommy Boy. Come on. Anyway, yeah. And so what do you rely most on? You've already said that you flew to London and the first thing you did was you logged into your cameras and your parameters and things like that. So what is your number one piece of equipment that as a farmer you think you need? I don't mean lights and pumps. That's essential. Corals would die without them. But what's your number one?
A roof.
Yeah, the roof for sure.
Yeah.
And
depending on where you live.
And air, oxygen. No, seriously. I think the dosing pumps, dosing all the bulling elements, and the dosing pumps that are dosing the kalkwasser. Those are the most vital. Because the alkalinity usage is so high, if a dosing pump doesn't work, it can really turn south within a couple of hours. So I think those dosing pumps are checked on every day. Is checked if the hoses are not clogged. So that's definitely something on my short list to do every day. The KH keeper or the monitor is not even that important. Of course, it's important to see if the dosing pumps are working properly, but the actual dosing pumps are the most critical part, I think, and they're basically checked every day if they work correctly. Yeah. So cool. That's the most important. That's basically the lifeline of the whole system. Yeah.
I would agree. That's probably my number one is the Trident controlled dosing is what I use. It's been a bit of a game changer for me. If that goes sideways, then things do go sideways quite quickly.
Yeah, they shift very quickly. And I had a couple of instances where you have a tubing of the dosing pump burst, or you have a alkalinity line that's clogged and doesn't dose anything anymore. That you see the alkalinity drop very rapidly if something like that happens, and to get it back on track, you will have a big dip for sure. Anyway, you really want to prevent that.
It's one thing having a fish tank with 10 or 15 corals in it and a few milliliters doesn't go in, but when you've got a farm, and you've got 1,000 screaming children wanting fed, then
we dose almost 2.5 liters of bulling solution of each, so A and B. C a little bit less, but the A and B part are 2.5 liters per system per hour.
Wow.
So that's, if something doesn't work, it goes south really, really quickly.
We just had that question in the comments. I think you just answered that. So that's
sorry, it's 2.5 liters a day, not an hour. That will be crazy, but it's 2.5 liters per
makes more sense.
That makes more sense.
We're all sitting there going,
whoa.
Sorry, guys. It's Sunday morning. I'm not trying to brag, guys. It's
a Dutch thing. They've all got the munchies.
Yeah. I guess so. Yeah.
Got a spare room just as a dosing container.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I do have 30-liter dosing containers for every system with the bulling. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Jebao pumps, Jebao dosing pumps.
No,
Mr. Jebao? No. Oh, no.
No.
Oh, no. Come on, then. Please explain.
There's a limit to his trust.
The dosing pumps. I'm using Reef Factory. I don't know if that's any better, but for me, it has been very consistent and very reliable for years. So I'm using the Reef Factory dosing pumps, the old style, not the new ones.
Yeah.
The old style dosing pumps which actually use the Kamur dosing heads, which are very high quality. Yeah, very high quality. And
with the bluey purple.
Yeah, they have orange and bluey purple dosing heads, and those dosing heads are indestructible for sure. Those are really, really good, and spare parts are very easy to get. You can source them directly from China. You can have enough in the farm to replace things very quickly. So that's the dosing pumps I use. You also use the KH Keeper from Reef Factory, but it only monitors, so it doesn't control any of the dosing pumps. So it doesn't adjust any dosing based on the alkalinity measurings. So it just passively do the measurings, and that's it. So it's working really well.
Since we're still on equipment for a minute, before I move on, is there anything that you've used over the years just to flip it on its head this morning and say that it was absolute garbage and you would never use again? You'd have to mention any names if you don't know if you're anybody.
Yeah, I've been using the Aquamatic UV sterilizers for a couple of years. I used the 55 watts put in series.
Spiral,
so I used
the spiral one.
Yeah, the Helix 2.0. Yeah, they're cheap. They're cheap
for a reason.
Yeah, for a reason. Yeah. And they will start to leak after a couple of years, and basically dissolve. They will start to dissolve because when you open them up, basically you have black water coming out. Just the plastic will dissolve. So I learned my lesson, and I switched to more expensive Deltec ones.
Same here, exactly the same reasons.
Yeah. So
interesting.
You know, mine were on for 24/7 as well, so that's pretty heavy usage. But I cannot really recommend them, to be honest. No. But other than that, I don't use a lot of equipment, to be honest. I keep it very simple. So I don't really had a lot of equipment that I really hated or didn't like or didn't work out, because I just keep things as simple as possible. Yeah.
What skimmers do you use out of interest? They brand?
Yeah, I'm using the Royal Exclusive, the Bubble King.
Very branded then.
Yeah, I think they are one of the best, and with one of the best, I mean the most stable. So even when the water level rises or drops down a little bit, they will still skim properly without overflowing or stop skimming at all.
Yeah.
I do have to say I used the Nios quantum skimmers, the 300, the big ones, with the DC pumps. So they're quite loud, especially compared to the Royal Exclusive. So I cannot really recommend them for a tank that's in your living room, but they are, especially for the price, they are very good as well. They are a little bit more sensitive to fluctuations in water level, but they do a very good job for sure. Yeah. So those two brands I use at the moment. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right, Christian. I think Christian's calmed down, hopefully at home, and licking his wounds. Or I've just poked the bear saying that. So apologies. He can have a go at me later. One more for Rob, and then we've got a couple that I'm going to dive into for Christian. Remember, guys, thanks for watching. If there's anything you want to ask Leo that we've not covered so far, please stick it in the comments, and I will open the floor up shortly. Rob, the next one from you to pretty much wrap us up.
Yes. So just out of interest, have you got any, I guess you said you don't import lots of coral, but I still imagine you've got a method, a QT method.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, quarantine is vital. I think when you have such a large number of acropora that you really want to keep long term, everything has to be free of pests. Otherwise, sooner or later, you can basically break down your whole farm. Mm-hmm. So all the corals are very well quarantined for at least 2 months in a separate quarantine system, which contains 2 different tanks, which are separated from each other. And when the corals come in, Observational, but also treatment, actually.
Right. Okay. Right.
Yeah, so both. So the corals are, when they came in, they are dipped. They will enter the first quarantine tank. They will be in there for observation for a week. Then they will be dipped again, moved to the second quarantine tank. Then the first quarantine tank is emptied out and rinsed with fresh water. And then 1 week later, the coral is dipped again and moved back to the first quarantine. So the corals between dips can never reinfect themselves, basically. That's how it works. And they're dipped for almost every week for at least 2 months before they will enter anything outside of the quarantine tanks. And in between those 8 weeks, they will, of course, be visually inspected as well, because a lot of pests you can actually see, or a lot of eggs you can potentially see. Unfortunately, some pests are really invisible to the eye, or invisible even with a microscope. We also use microscopes to inspect. And of course, after dipping, you can inspect your container where you dipped in if there's anything in there that came off the coral. And after 2 months, after we dip them for many times, they will go to a holding tank, which is more of an observation tank, for another couple of months. There we will see if the coral is developing properly. Some pests will actually be in the skeleton, like boring algae, issues like that. And those issues will arise on a later point than in those first 2 months. So you can actually see if the coral starts to grow, starts to get the color back. And if the coral really behaves and grows in a way that you think, okay, this coral is healthy and behaves in a normal way, then you can actually move them to the main systems. Having said that, we basically closed off the system upstairs for any new corals. So the whole collection that's upstairs is off limits. So all the new corals will go in the downstairs tanks, and upstairs is really like a vault. So nothing comes in,
right,
and only frags come out. Yeah,
there's no connection. Yeah, between
there's no connection at all. There's even different tools. All the tools we use, all the buckets that we use, everything is separated.
Isolation.
Yes, yeah. It's actually a physical different room with a door. So it's really easy to keep things in there separated from the rest.
Cool. That's quite a long process.
Yeah, it's a long process, but when you have thousands of frags and 300-400 other colonies,
definitely.
It's and actually when we encounter some really infected corals, we actually encountered the new acroporidic flatworms, which are the very tiny flatworms, which actually lay their eggs on living tissue. So those are actually too risky for us to even put in a tank after quarantine. So corals that are infected with these types of pests, who actually discard right away instead of even putting them in quarantine. So we only quarantine the corals that look healthy to us and look uninfected to us. Otherwise, we won't even take the risk. We rather throw away a batch of corals or one coral instead of infecting the whole
taking
farm.
A chance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that leads me on to one of the questions that Christian had got in his drawer for you, Leo. I'm just going to jump into this one. So, linked to Rob's question, Christian's saying there's many businesses who claim it's impossible to sell truly pest-free corals. What's your take on that? What's your opinion on that phrase?
Yeah, I read that question before, and I thought about it for a while. And I think, first of all, what do you consider a pest? I had a talk with Jake Adams, who unfortunately passed away, as you know, and we were actually discussing this topic. And he said, yeah, actually, for me, coralline algae is also a pest. Because Jake Adams would love to have a tank that was free of any coralline algae, because it's just a hassle to clean all the pumps all the time and clean the glass. So I actually thought, is it possible to quarantine your corals so well that you actually prevent coralline algae from ever entering the systems? But that's a little bit of a mind game. But What is a pest? I think a pest is any animal or any pathogen that's really detrimental to the acro, is able to kill it, and is able to spread around the tank, also spreading to healthy individuals. So if you consider a pest, the thing I described like this, I think my corals are definitely pest-free. Is there never any speck of algae on my frag plugs? I cannot guarantee that. I can guarantee my system is free of bryopsis for sure, but I cannot say my tank is free of coralline algae. I cannot say my tank is free of any copepods. I mean the good copepods. But I can say my tank is free of any bugs, any flatworms, any pathogen, bacterial. I can 100% guarantee that. And what does it mean, 100% guarantee? It means I can honestly say it's going to be pest-free. And if it's not, and a hobbyist encounters any pest after acquiring the coral, he will get a full refund immediately without question. Or new corals, but probably he doesn't want that, right? If he finds a pest. So he'll get a refund immediately, which hopefully give the customer the trust that all the corals that they buy from us are really pest-free. And I think I really can account for that because the systems are running for such a long time now, 3+ years, and we dip all the corals on a regular basis just as a check. So we take out certain species which are vulnerable for, let's say, flatworms or bugs. We put them in a dip or we treat them. We visually inspect them. We never encountered any pest in the farm. So I think we can say still up to this point that we offer pest-free frags that are definitely free of any bugs, worms, pathogens. Yeah. So I think it's possible.
I think it's possible.
Yeah.
Do you think you're making it a lot easier as well that you're not continually importing corals from Indonesia or wherever, bringing in hundreds of
I was going to say that.
I would say if you have a high volume of imports, especially when you combine those imports with farming, because I see many farmers actually importing a lot as well and putting them in the same system. I think it's very hard to give any guarantee. But that's also what you pay for, right? Because you potentially pay much less for those frags and less for those corals as mariculture. So that's fair. That's totally fair. But I give a pest-free guarantee also because I want to add as much value to the frags as I can give. Because you pay a little bit of a higher price compared to mariculture. So you can expect a little bit more,
Is that a common practice in Holland then, Leo? Do reefers buying out of that area or local reefers and reefers, do they expect that quality of a pest-free product? Is it sort of an expectation from a reefer's point of view already?
I don't really think so. I think the most hobbyists actually start out with mariculture frags or imported corals. And I think that's totally normal because you get so much more coral for your money. So initially it seems much more attractive, right, to buy a big, huge table acro and put it in your tank, and for let's say 150 euros, you have a huge colony. But I think over time, when a reefer becomes more experienced and they had their first flatworm infestation, or they had many mariculture colonies turn brown or die or whatever, they will at some point think like, okay, maybe those aquaculture frags actually have added value. But I'm not going to judge, or I'm not going to expect any hobbyists from the initial start to really, buy my aquaculture frags right away, because at first hand it seems much less attractive. But over time you will start to value the pest-freeness and the fact that it has been tank hardened and really tank grown. But that's something you have to experience yourself. It's a journey. You
got a fan in the comments, I'm assuming, that knows you, AJ Smilder. Thanks for joining us. Leo is the only one that does this. I know this is a common frustration from Christian, who's just jumped in and said the following. So yeah, I mean, it's something that's quite a hot topic at the minute for reefers in the UK, especially SBS keepers, in terms of the QT. I mean, yeah, we as hobbyists, there's another comment there. Yeah, I agree. Well, vendors need to check for yourself, but there's only so much that a normal hobbyist could do. I mean, you've got the cost, you've got the facility of having another tank set up or 2 tanks set up.
Yeah.
So what is your, before we move on, sorry, what is your overall sort of summary, I should say, thought on what other vendors or companies, businesses should be doing? Do you think it's something they should be doing, or do you think it's...
No, to be honest, I don't think so. I think the vendors are pretty straightforward, that they just acquire maricultured colonies, and that's what you pay for. You pay for the risk that something becomes more beautiful. You pay for the risk that something turns brown or die. You pay for the potential of any pests. So I think they're quite straightforward about it, at least over here. It's also the price point that they offer. But I do want to suggest hobbyists to really quarantine those corals and dip them at least a couple of times and inspect them very well before just putting them in their established system. So it would be nice if vendors really give a little bit of a advice or warning label when people acquire those corals. But I don't think it's really bad practice from the stores. It's just an added value that we can give as true farmers. But that's also what the customer pays for. So
I was just about to ask that. Your price reflects that, I'm assuming, yeah?
It's just a different product, you know. Mariculture colony is a different product than an aquaculture frag. And as long as you're honest about that, I think it's totally fine. Yeah. Okay. They're also, I do have to say, if I can say a little bit about it, there are also stores that just cut up they cut up the mariculture colonies, put it on a frag plug, and immediately sell it within the same week even.
Wow.
Claiming it's aquaculture, I think that's bad practice, because you're just selling something that's something else. So that's the only case I can think of that's not being very honest. But if you're just selling mariculture colonies, I think that's totally fine. So I don't see any issue with that. So.
Okay, thank you. Right, we jump to this one that also Christian had for you. What's the biggest lesson that you have learned as a coral farmer? What was the biggest thing that changed the way you reef?
I think the methods and the way I'm keeping the corals are actually the same, roughly the same as when I was a hobbyist. The scale was just much bigger. Yeah. But the thing I learned most as a coral farmer is it's much more time consuming than I thought. I cannot take any weekends anymore, really any weekends. You have to be very consistent. You have to have a lot of discipline. Not always, even on the days when you really don't want to do water changes, you really have to do water changes. So there's a lot of routine involved, and you really have to be disciplined to really keep things going. So that's a big learning curve, and also being your own to being an entrepreneur and really doing everything yourself, from the website to shipping to photography to bookkeeping, to be also an employer to other people. It's much more than just growing corals in the end. And that's also a nice thing. It's also challenging, of course. It's a lot of fun. But that's something I didn't realize before, I think, to this extent.
And being a father, a husband.
I think that's totally the same. It's also something you don't realize what it actually is before you actually are a father. So, you're many things at the same time, and you have to just make everything work. But
think how many corals you're a father to, though. I mean, you've got thousands of kids.
It's roughly it's as time consuming and as exhausting as being
your child support payments must be fucking huge.
Well, It could be better, I think.
Well, as he grows up, you'll get some free help in the farm. That's one way to look at having children.
Yeah, either he loves it or he hates it. So I hope he.
But either way, he's working in there.
You'll love it.
Yeah, for sure.
Just put a saltwater fish tank in his bedroom. Never mind a cold water.
Within a couple of years, I guess.
Yeah.
Just on that sort of topic, we sort of touched on it a little bit. Rob's experimenting a little bit at the minute, aren't you, Rob, with the spawning process? Have you got any plans for the farm? Is it you're thinking about? You done any research? I think it was a little bit touched on your recent podcast. What do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. I'm definitely. I don't have a lot of time left. I have to be honest, but I did take it into account building this farm to also do some spawning, because all the mother colonies upstairs are actually, like I said, they're in a separate room. That room is totally blinded from the outside world, so I can run a different lighting schedule there. There's not any light pollution in there. I can run a different climate in there, so I can really adjust the lighting settings, but also the temperatures to a local reef in Indonesia or Australia. So I definitely want to do some spawning experiments in there. Mostly to see if I can actually hybridize some species, so I can blend some species together. I think propagation-wise, it's not very interesting to farm any corals with spawning. Actually, I think fragging is much more commercially interesting. But to create new species, actually by crossbreeding them, I think that's something that's potentially very interesting. Yeah. For a commercial coral farm to do so. So I'm definitely want to dive into that more. I'm just very time limited. Maybe I want to attract some students who can make a sort of thesis out of it, and who really can dive into that subject, because I don't have time to do that myself. Yeah, but the facilities are all there. So it's definitely ready to go.
Definitely ready to go. Cool.
Yeah.
Josh, Jordan's giving you a prod here. Wake up. And Rama's asking if you've actually gone any fish and do they make any mess, because they've not seen one swim by as of yet.
Well, shoulder chromis.
We've had the fish discussion on a previous live stream, haven't we? Where and we've mentioned quarantine today. My quarantine hasn't gone as well as planned with fish. So we're currently doing a fallow period, and then we'll be following Rob's method of quarantine to try and eliminate any fish pests or parasites going forward. At the moment, no, you can't see any fish.
Thank you for that. Okay. Anything in particular on the shopping list? Anything that you want? Anything that you must have for the next fish load? Anything?
I think with it being a smaller tank, I've had this discussion with Rob again, and this is why Rob, we know, has the big tank. The more room you can have for the fish, the better. So for me, the reality is I'm going to go as small as possible. Realistically, sort of like the yellow striped cardinal fish, where they don't really get any more than sort of 1.5 inches, is the limit at what I think would be a sensible size for a tank of my size. And I think we all do overestimate how much room we really have in a tank. I've had small wrasse in here before, and they paste the glass, and you can tell they're not happy. So I think it would be an unkind gesture for me to put the bigger fish in the tank. So yeah, a lot of smaller fish, hopefully to give it a bit of scale, make it look a bit bigger than what it actually is.
Cool.
Which I know we all like to do.
Yeah.
Whilst we're on fish, then Leo, we've not talked about this yet.
Yeah,
I know Rob's itching. I can see him itching to talk fish. So go on. I'll let you go, Rob. The only thing I will say, the one word I will say, is stripy.
I saw the stripy. Yeah, so you got an Australian stripy. So in each of your sort of frag tables, do you have a set sort of number of certain species of fish?
Yes, I have a list of workers, and they're basically the same in every tank. So I do have several surgeonfish, of course, from the Ecathuras family, but also Zebrasoma family. So it can be a scopas and a convict tang. Then in most tanks I have a bristletooth tank as well. because they tend to eat a little bit different types of algae. I have a fox face, 1 or 2, because they eat the more stubborn algae, but they also eat sponges and all that kind of stuff, that you don't want to have in your tank. I have a couple of wrasses, the very easy ones, so the 6-line wrasse or the 8-line wrasse, those little buggers.
Yeah.
And I have a few stripies for sure, like you mentioned, because they will, if there's any aptasia in the tank, they will eliminate it for sure. But also they will pick on anything that's not Acropora, basically. So that's the thing I want to have.
Yeah, I was going to say
right?
today.
Yeah.
It's perfect in an acro tank.
Yeah, it's perfect.
We asked Sam about that last week, didn't we? And he said, he said the same. Interesting.
Yeah. So and to top it off, I have a lot of chromis in every tank.
Yeah,
they also just graze and pick on anything that's around, but they also add a lot of bioload actually. So whenever you throw in food, they will eat up all the little bits and all the leftovers.
Right.
So they're also
not a copper band fan then.
I do in some tanks I do have a copper band together with the stripies actually, but copper bands are so hard to keep even in very large systems. They tend to do not so well, and they're very slow eaters, and they cannot handle a lot of flow, or they actually don't like it. So I tend to prefer the stripies for let's say aptasia or small bristle worms or that kind of stuff. Because stripies are indestructible. Basically, it's they're a little bit more expensive, but they're so strong and they can handle a lot of flow, and they can be kept alone, but also in a group. They're not aggressive, so they're more or less the perfect fish for acros. I think for LPS they could be a little bit of a risk, but I keep some LPS, like I mentioned before, and I never actually saw them eating any of those. So I think they're pretty much reef safe, at least in my systems.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's what I use, and I use basically the same list of fish in every system. So there's not a lot of variety.
So apart from the fact that you're using them to control algae and lactation and stuff, do you think the actual bioload they add to the water is important?
That's very important. Yeah, there's a constant source of fish poop basically. And so the corals are fed gradually during the whole day with fish poop, and I think that's actually super important. Yeah.
What food do you feed for your fish? Is it frozen?
I mostly use frozen food because they're fresh. Well, they're frozen, but they're more fresh than pellets. Fresh frozen. I use a little bit of the algae flakes for the surgeon fish. Although I think they get most of their greens from actually grazing the whole surface area. But they do get a little bit of extra flake food a couple of times a week. Other than that, I just feed a variety of frozen foods, mostly mysis, but also fish eggs, the more finer foods with higher fatty acid levels.
Talking about food, John's asking, just look at some of the earlier comments, Leo. Anything in particular you feed the corals? Any aminos or anything getting put in the system?
No, not anymore. I experimented with aminos before, but I don't see any benefit. I actually also didn't see any harm. But I think feeding your fish with a variety of foods is actually enough. If you cannot, like let's say in Josh's tank, when you don't have a lot of fish and also not the capability of adding a lot of bioload, I think adding some more liquid foods like reefroids or any aminos makes more sense. But in my case, I can just add more food and the fish will actually consume whatever I give them. So in these big systems, it doesn't make sense. But I think in smaller systems, stuff like that. I think the easy reef stuff is very high quality. Doesn't have a lot of fillers. It's definitely in home tanks. It's definitely a good solution for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Couple of questions from the viewers for you, Leo. I'm going to jump on to Christian's last question in a minute for us before we wrap up. Alex is asking, excuse me, how often do you replace the T5 bulbs tubes on the farm? And secondly, what LED will you buy when T5 production ends?
Yeah, good question. I replace the T5s at least once a year, but I do them in 2 batches. So I change half of them out at one point, and then 6 months later, I will change out the other half. So I have a more or less constant light intensity. So I don't change them out every 12 months all together.
You're not shocking anything.
I'm not shocking anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mostly 10 to 12 months with the bulbs. And LED, what I prefer, I don't know yet. I'm still experimenting with radions at the moment, but also the Orphec OR3 bars. And my preference at the moment is a little bit more towards the OR3 bars, and they are actually used as a standalone. So I will just cover the whole tank with bars, as you would cover the whole tank with T5s, because you have the same spread. I think that's the most important. The spread of the light is very important, and the OR3 bars are relatively inexpensive compared to radions. So for me, that makes more sense as well. I don't care much about controllability. For me, it's just switch on and off. That's fine enough for me. So I think my preference would go to the OR3 bars, also because they're basically waterproof, more or less. So you can splash water on them. You can just rinse them off under the tap. It's for farm solutions, it makes a lot of sense. But I do like the versatility of the radions as well. You can play around with the spectrum a little bit more. Cool. So those 2 are things I experiment with at the moment. But Leo, maybe another light will come up. You never know.
Yeah. Obviously, you're using the ATI bulbs in your T5 fixtures. Have you had a look at the ATI Stratton fixtures, the LEDs, with them being a big panel of light?
Yeah, I did. But to cover my farm with the Strattons, I can probably buy a new BMW.
Not cheap.
And I would actually prefer the BMW, I think. Yeah. Or any other car. You can fill in any brand or any expensive brand.
You need to get on the phone to Jebao, see if they're in the makings of the light panel.
Well, you never know. You never know.
You never know.
No, they are. The form factor is really nice. I think ATI makes very good lamps quality-wise, because their T5 lamps are, I think, the best in the industry. But for farm setup, it's just too expensive. I think for a home tank, it's a good solution. They look beautiful, and they also put out a lot of a lot of spread. But for a farm solution, I think it's not a good option.
I think the fact they're completely silent is what attracts it to me. I'd like one really large, the biggest Stratton over this tank here, because when the fans fire up on these 2 Radians, it's a bit distracting when I'm working. But
I can imagine. For me, that's also no issue, right? Because the farm also has some noise, especially with 60 plus Jebao pumps. They are not very loud, but 60 of them, you can definitely hear them. But for me, that's not even thing to take into account.
Right, I'm just going to jump into Christian's last question he had for you, Leo, before we hopefully can open the floor to the viewers in the comment section. So Christian was asking, what is the one thing being a coral farmer that you battle with the most? Nuisance, algae, pollutants, contaminants, etc.
Customers,
people, yes, shipping.
No, actually, I don't know, but all of my customers are pretty, I don't have a lot of bad experiences or headaches with customers, to be honest. And I'm not bragging about that at all, but I think most of my customers are very reasonable and very kind. The thing I'm battling most with is actually stability. I think algae, pollutants, contaminants, you can keep those under control one way or the other. You can, just by following the right regimen or quarantine procedures, you can really tackle those very quickly. But to keep those systems running steady, it's like taming a wild horse, because the systems want to go everywhere. The KH want to go down, phosphates maybe want to go up. So you're in a constant battle to keep things stable. You have to adjust tiny things every day. You have to check flow. You have to check dosing pumps. You have to check skimmers. You have to check certain parameters. So it's a daily battle to keep things stable. So I think that's in the end what takes up the most time. I think all the measurements and all the maintenance you have to do to keep things stable in the long term. That's the biggest battle. Yeah.
Cool. Right then. So a couple more questions for you. Say Christine agrees. Daily battle.
Yeah. Yeah, you cannot slack on those, because in the long term it will hit you in the head, right? So yeah.
Another one for you here, Leo. Dedicated Reefer, thanks for joining us this morning. Leonardo, whilst dosing your calc, does the solution weaken throughout the week?
No,
Good
it doesn't.
question.
Yeah, good question. Of course, I can definitely monitor it, because if alkalinity would drop during the week, I would definitely notice. But I just add enough, so even after 1 week of mixing, I'm still saturating all the water in the whole reactor two times a day. So I just add really enough calc for it to be saturated twice a day. So I never have any weakening of the calc over the week. No.
Just jumping back into the comments, a few more questions as well. We've already talked about some of these topics, but AJ Smilder, do you think that home spawning is going to be more usual over the coming years?
I think it will be. I think the understanding of what causes corals to spawn becomes more and more readily available to the average hobbyist. Also, the equipment, all the moon cycles build in all the light pendants, the radions, and other brands. So I think spawning events will become more regular. I think raising those gametes will be still very challenging. You definitely need a separate system for that. But they're actually hobbyists. They're actually guys in the US who just spawn and raise corals in their garage at home right now. So it's definitely going to be easier over time, for sure. I think
it's going to be one of those things that when somebody gets it right and they share the information, if they're prepared to, not hold it too close to the chest, then I think others will follow and it will become a fashion. I hope it remains a fashion for a long time for the benefit of the hobby.
And probably the industry will also, jump on the bandwagon and bring out some products that maybe, help with the spawning or help with the settling of the gametes, or, So I definitely think in 10 years it will be much more common than it is right now.
I think the man that's going to do it is going to be Rob, and I think all
setting me up to fail.
Dr. Rob,
gatekeeping of information and stuff like that is, I think it's shit. I think this industry needs to get a little bit more together, start sharing information. At the end of the day, the hobby is starting to decline in most places in the world, and it needs a little bit of a kick up the arse. So if we all bind together a wee bit, it's going to work. So I think Rob is going to share his... I'm
a big fan of open source, in scientific literature as well. Open source is the way to go, I think. There's paywalling anything is just putting barriers up, isn't it? So, I intend to share all of my journey, good and bad.
I'm a huge fan, Rob. Well done.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Looking forward to it. Yeah, looking forward to you giving me the ingredients to your magic sauce or whatever you use.
Easy enough.
That just sounds wrong on a Sunday morning.
Well, it's just your two minds. Right, we'll jump into a couple of more here for you, Leo. I think it's actually already been answered in the comments section, but Rama was asking what salt you use. I think you've already talked about it. Tropic Marine, is that right?
Yes, the Pro Reef, Tropic Marine Pro Reef. Actually,
still not sponsored.
Not sponsored, but we definitely work together. So most of the products that I use are Tropic Marine, but I won't be punished if I use something else and talk about it. So I'm not like
Tropic Marine stuff.
Yeah, it's just it's just good stuff. And we use it for I actually use it since the beginning. Since I was 16, I used the Pro Reef because they said it was the best, and I just went for it. And I never actually tried something else. So still happy. But I have to say, I don't use a lot of products, right? I use the balling, I use the Tropic Marine salt and the trace elements, and we don't add a lot of extra bottles or additives at all. So
you mentioned, actually, talking about additives, that you're using urea. So you're coming back from nitrogen, ammonia, right back to urea.
Yeah, I'm dosing basically the even a step before ammonia, because urea is broken down into ammonia. Sometimes when I want to lower the phosphates a little bit, you actually have to add a little bit of carbon or nitrate. Or
so how do you go back adding urea to your tank? Just because I've got an image, obviously.
No. I just have a bottle of pure urea powder. They're cheaper. Okay. They're definitely cheaper options for sure, but I don't.
Don't start weaning your sump, Robert.
I was going to say, I mean, that's the cheapest dosing solution ever, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it can really help lower phosphate. So maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're just starting right at the beginning of that.
I'd love you to explain that to the wife if she caught you, Rob.
I would definitely run some carbon afterwards, because your water can be a little bit yellow. So.
Right. Okay. If any of your viewers have got anything you want us to ask Leo, please add it in the comment section in the next 5 minutes. We're going to wrap up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it over to you, Leo, as soon as we've got time. Is there anything that you'd like to ask us UK reefers? Anything that you'd like to know about our reefing scene?
Yeah, how much did I know it's a sensitive topic, maybe you don't want to talk about it, but how much did the hobby or the industry changes after the Brexit happened? Ooh. Did it change, or did it make any difference?
Yes. Yes, it did make a difference.
And
what for an individual, for me, because I used to buy corals from Europe and get them shipped over, which I quite liked. So that's a massive market just completely removed. And then because I run Royal Exclusive stuff, I still have to buy it from Germany. So basically, it just cost me another like £70-80 for everything I buy, because I had to have the duty and the import tax to it. So personally, I've seen nothing positive from leaving the EU in terms of the hobby. I can imagine. Yeah, that's just my take on it. I'm sure other people have got other opinions.
Yeah.
I see, Christian, we lost Emblar and de Jong. Yeah,
we lost de Jong.
Yeah, it's a big market. It's just we just lost a massive market. You know, all of the things that we just used to look at and buy and think nothing of, it just went.
Yeah, but I was talking to Tom a little bit before the episode, and he said that the interaction or the community is also a little bit falling apart. But you would think after something like that, maybe the community would get stronger because people are more dependent on each other. But that didn't really happen, I think. Then
I think it depends on the platform. The platform's changed, is what I was trying to say. I mean, Ron's, to be fair to Ron, he's put a local Discord channel together, which is absolutely great. Shout out there, Ron. Love it. Brilliant. Credit where it's due. I think the platform's changed. I think we have the community still there. I'm not saying it's disappeared. It's still there. It's just on different platforms. And I just think that for me, it's the personal interaction, physical, personal, without being too graphic, interaction that people need and people like. And there's some people, not just in the chat, but there's some people that I talk to in the local hobby, reefing community, that they might live on their own. It might be their, what they spend a lot of time doing. And I think for me, that social interaction is important. And I used to be, heavily homed in on a Saturday, spending my afternoon in the LFS and, with all the reefers. And because those LFSs have shut down or become, less and less, I suppose, appealing.
That's because Tom was in there for 5 hours, not spending any money. Because
I'm falling out with everybody. No, I just think that it's everything changes. We know that technology and social media platforms, but I just wish that we could get back to the old days of going into an LFS. I talked about this only yesterday or the day before with Christian. I couldn't go anywhere on. What day are we on? Sunday morning. I couldn't go anywhere Friday and get a bucket of salt that I use, fauna salt, without driving over an hour.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what is the world going to? And I couldn't even go anywhere really within half an hour, and look at a nice selection of corals and fish. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
And that's just so sad, and I just think, not to go off topic too much, the shops used to be a hub and a meeting spot, watering hole, whatever you want to call it, for local reefers to come to. And now that's sort of changed to an extent, and everything is on these social media, webcam, YouTube platforms, which it's still good that it happens because it needs to happen and it needs to grow. I just hope that at some point or some of these businessmen who've got the money to make the change can actually listen to the reefers or be reefers themselves, which would be even better for the hobby, and make those changes with a bit of passion, which is what needs to happen. So
I personally love this because I don't want to touch any of you.
Well, we don't want to touch you because you just like meatloaf and haggis. But paint your face blue. Paint your face blue and run around shouting freedom, like I call it.
Bravo.
No.
Yeah, but I recognize that when I started as a teenager, I knew nothing, and internet was very limited back then, and there weren't a lot of books about marine aquariums, or they were very, very outdated already. So I was on a biking distance from a local fish store, which specialized in salt water, and I actually learned everything over there. I was there twice a week. I didn't buy a lot because I didn't have a lot of money, but I was just there twice a week to talk to other guys and just look at all the corals, look at all the fish, everything that came in. And that was basically my school. That was my training. I think it would be very hard if I was 16 right now to acquire the same level of information and to have one or two mentors, who really takes you from point A and guide you. Because there's almost too much information right now, and all the information is it's here one day and it's gone the next day. There's not really a long-term discussion going on anymore, or it's very hard to find it, at least for someone that starts today.
Yeah.
Here, Jay, I agree with you. People leaving hobby is greater than the uptake. So sad to hear. If you're watching this, you're thinking of getting marine tank, do it. It's the best hobby community, and science is fascinating. Yes.
Yeah.
It definitely is a learning curve.
I think
Go on, Josh.
What Jay's touched on there with more people leaving the hobby than joining the hobby, he is right. I've only been in the marine side of the hobby for around 5 years, and I've noticed it die off massively. And I think that again comes back to the Brexit conversation we've just had, and the massive increase in costs. Obviously, we've lost a lot of suppliers, so a lot of the stores will be getting in, and this is going to sound a little bit critical, but they might be getting in subpar corals. They might be importing sort of like wild collections or maricultures from, direct from Indonesia. The quality is not as good. The corals might not have been taken care of as well, so they die off in stores. Stores costs are going up. Like Rob said, just paying the duty on products coming in, dry goods. Again, another cost that's been put across to the stores. And it's caused them to close down or revert back to freshwater. And then obviously with the lack of stores, it's an increased cost to the hobbyists because they're having to go, like you said, just there, Tom, you've had to go further afield to find your bucket of salt. And I think the Brexit, and it might be something to do with COVID as well. Obviously, it did have a massive impact on the economy. But those two factors have been a huge, yes, we've got a better access to a community now online. But I think finances are a massive overriding factor for us in the UK that it is really causing the hobby to sort of slide away from what it once was, even in the 5 years I've been doing it. And it's a real shame. I had access to maybe 4 or 5 shops in the Northeast when I started. I'm down to 1 now, which, that's in 5 years. We're losing 1 a year in effect. And it's a real shame because there were some really nice stores with a real nice selection of corals and fish. Reasonable prices, but you have 1 store now which basically has the monopoly over the Northeast. They can charge what they want, they can get in what they want, and if you don't have what you like, you have to buy what they have because there's nothing else available to you. So it is a real shame.
I think the one responsibility we do have, though,
we're a happy bunch, Leo.
We are a happy bunch. Well, I was just about to put a sprinkle a little bit of positivity on there, Robert. The one responsibility we do have is, if we can, is to support the events and the group gatherings that are happening in the UK. I know it's nowhere near what we would love it to be in terms of comparison to the States as such, but you've got to start somewhere, as we all know. So I think the Love to Reef that Paul did, it was brilliant earlier on in the year. It was great. Hats off to him again. Shout out to there, Paul. And obviously the forthcoming Aqua Show, which I think a lot of us are going to be going to this coming or next weekend, should I say? That's at Stoneleigh in Coventry, isn't it? Just that's starting next Saturday and Sunday. I think quite a few people in the chat are going to be venturing out there, staying over. I know there's a group of us so far that have got sort of 12 together that are meeting up the Friday before, and we're all kicking off for a few beers and a meal or whatever else at the Old Mill Hotel. So if you want to join us, send me a DM. It'd be nice for you to join. But I think we've got a responsibility to these shows to make the effort. You know, I know there's fuel to be paid for and a ticket maybe at the end of it. The forthcoming one that Paul's putting on at AAC in October, the end of October, and again, Fish Palace is supporting with that. So again, that's off to you, Paul. But yeah, we all need to make the conscious effort to attend these things. No point in sitting at home and moaning about it if we're not prepared to put a little bit of effort in. Because if we don't make the effort and there's reefers we don't collectively come together, then if you were a business, you know, wanting to invest in this hobby, you're going to question whether it's lucrative enough for you, you know, from an investor's point of view. So I think there's a few caveats to bear in mind with this. But no, looking forward to the Aqua Show next weekend. I'd like to see people there. I hope people are going. Message in the comments if you are. It'd be nice to see how many people from the live chat are going to be showing the face. I know, Rob, you're going. Don't expect Leo to fly over because he's booking his parameters all day.
Bring one of those Walt Disney frags with him.
Yeah, definitely. In his pocket. Yeah. But no, hopefully we can get something started up north as well. So it's an even spread across the UK. Get you down, Ron. You can climb over that wall that you've got between us and Scotland at some point. I had to get it in there. Today. That's the one.
Your patter is shocking.
Well, I'm working on it. Like I said,
Agates and Adrian's wall, paint your face blue, bring it on.
And I am brew, sorry, and I am brew. Anyway, Leo, you have been an absolute pleasure and a delight. Thank you ever so much for coming on. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Thanks it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing a lot of the information. Yeah, no, it's been brilliant.
For everybody watching, you've got a boost in sales, Leo, but
yeah, unfortunately,
it's not the point. It's just nice to talk to you guys. Yeah,
no, and I appreciate it. You're not, you know, like Rob says, you're not going to unfortunately get any sales, but I would like to keep in touch with you, and it'd be great for you to come on and hopefully answer some more Q&A in the future.
For sure.
A bit more together for you. Hopefully, by which point Christian will have fixed his studio, put it back together. But we shall see. But no, thanks to everybody for joining and tuning in this Sunday morning. It's been a pleasure. Thanks again, Leo. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Josh, for joining us. And we won't see you next Sunday because we're going to be at Aqua, but we will come back the week after with a bang. So we will see you then. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.